Well, it's amazing. I was so very young, and the first time or the first inkling of I had a purpose when I was about 3 years old, 4 years old, walking through my grandmother's garden and looking at the petals of flowers and leaves. And I saw that this was life and this was beautiful. And it was like a utopia in my heart and my mind. And I said, there's so much more ahead of me. And I remember that being the first time I really recognized inside my soul that I was a living soul inside this body.
Hi, my name is Zenka Caro. I'm founder of LightNet, and my passion and purpose is to make the impossible possible. I am here today with Rocky Trainer. And as I mentioned in the teaser, this is one of my absolute favorite interviews because I really love Roxy's personality, her MO, what she's bringing to the world. She brings a very clear curiosity, kindness, and it really does shine through. She has had an incredible career starting out in New York City behind the scenes of the American Ballet, watching from the wings, being really taken back by the choreography. She went on to study dance with Martha Graham, which is very prestigious. And she had a voice that had an 4.5 octave range, and she has used that throughout her whole life in her singing telegram company and more. Right now, she also works in a variety of things. She is a manager for Mark Anthony, who's a famous medium. She also is a wine distributor. She works for Precious Metal Refinement as well. So, this is an example of someone that has a lot of energy, a lot of soul, and a lot of purpose in their life. Check it out.
I've had so many careers and things that I've done in my life, and each part of my life has brought me to this point. I started out as a child dancer, and I love performing in front of people and making them smile and happy. And I also had a spiritual self at the same time, being raised in a very um, strict Catholic family. So my love for faith was a basis. However, for the arts, I remember seeing my first ballet, which was Swan Lake, and the music emoted such feeling within me. I wanted to be a dancer, and my dancing career took off because once that music started, I became the soul freeing itself, and I was floating on air, and every movement became an extension of what I was feeling inside. And that grew to a point where I actually auditioned for the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo at 8 years old. And because I was 8 years old and I did not have enough point being toe shoes, and I wasn't developed enough, they said, you are wonderful, but we can't take you on the stage to do this because of the fact of the developmental part of your physiology. But they invited me to go backstage and watch the performance. So this was the first time in the wings of the American Ballet Theater, where the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo was performing Coppelia. And in the wings, I saw the ballet dancers put their toe shoes in the chalk, getting ready, doing their warm up, and the excitement, hearing the orchestra begin. And then I watched the choreography. Instead of seeing the performance from the four walls in theater of being in the audience, now I was stage left and watching the dancers prepare and get their mindset centered, and heard their their introduction and then performance. And I watched each step and how they executed it and how it became a beautiful piece of art. And that's where choreography started to grow inside of me. Later on in years, I took singing and dancing. I had a wonderful theatrical type of family, although my mom was an illustration artist, and and that's back when they would do the actual sketchings of the models and then for the fashion shows. So I would sit and watch the models work. And what happened was that the children they hired to be in these big fashion shows, yes, they had these show moms that pushed them on stage, but they would begin to cry backstage and they didn't want to go on stage. And all of a sudden they looked at me and they go, "Hey, you know this. Put the dress on, go out on the runway, do what we're supposed to do." So all of a sudden I found myself with my little bit of ballet background at that time. I'm kind of going backwards, but that gave me the feeling of show and how to present myself and turn and smile at the audience and pose for the photographers, that sort of thing. So that was one thing. But on the other part of my family, and the other part was my dad. And my dad was a Navy SEAL, and also he was with the space program, an engineer in the space program. So there was a lot of technical science, that sort of thing. So I had a good balance of art and science. And so eventually I ended up in Florida, kind of jumping around. However, all of these things I was evolving. And to kind of put it in a small snapshot, how do you find your center? How do you help others? I was having a discussion with Mark Anthony, and he said, "Well, what do you enjoy doing the most?" And I say, "Well, I like to snorkel because that's another world. And when I snorkel, I am now immersed in this incredible beauty of another world." And we talk about going to other worlds, but beneath the sea, it is an amazing world. And there are times when you are swimming and you get caught in a riptide. Well, what do you do in a riptide to save yourself? You let go and you go with the flow. And then you find where then you can come back to the shore. And that's what life is. When you find that you're in the depths of struggle, get through it, flow with it, try to center yourself, don't panic, think, relax. So it's kind of a passive aggressive mindset. So you can go with it, take it all in, and then flow back to the shore. And that's how I think people should look at their lives when they find struggle, and to help them grow as a human being. Having said that, every instance in my life, when there was struggle, I went with the flow, and then it emerged into something that opened a new door. When I was 17, I studied with Martha Graham in New York City at her School of Contemporary Dance. What a great honor that was. And while I was there, we were taught her method. And her method is, our arms are like limbs of a tree. Our legs are like the roots to the earth. And our center of our body is the trunk of the tree. So we emerge and we also go deep. And then the mindset of centering oneself, breathing in the good, exhaling the bad, inhaling in and exhaling, and to remain calm and then stretch. And so her concept and her technique was based on her being an American, Native American Indian, and the concept of nature and being. Wow, it just struck home with me. I was like, yes, I get it. From that point, I moved on, And of course, the theater background, the modeling background, New York City, all of these wonderful things exposing me to the arts. I wanted to try everything. I got a job in a television studio and worked in one of the first video studios in New York when they were trying to expose video and instant replay. No one was going for it, so they designed a bus and they said, let's talk to the New York Jets and see if we could do a replay on the game. I was there when they were building that bus. In the same studio, Julia Child was cooking food, exposed me to amazing things. On another floor, Heinz and Son were doing their dancing routines. And right behind the studio was Sesame Street coming up. Jim Henson would come and sit in the lobby. It was like amazing for me. All of this energy, talent, gifted people were swirling around me. I was just a kid and I was eating it all up. So that got me into doing auditions and trying different things in theater and singing. And at the time, I had a 4.5 octave voice. So I didn't want to go into opera, but I wanted to go into music. All of a sudden, I find myself on stage working with jazz trios. I was fronting certain rock bands. I was backup singer. So I got a lot of exposure for that. In these times, I met my husband, and we traveled pretty much all over the country and had ups and downs. But there was a certain point in my life that he wanted to go his own way. And you can't count on another person to make you happy. No matter how much you love them, you have to let them go because that is your soul's journey. You learn from that because once I let that go, even though I was wounded, I realized my journey with him was that time, and now another threshold stood before me for more opportunity. And that's where people really, I think, lose it. You don't need another person to make you happy. You have to love yourself. You have to like yourself. And you don't have to compete. You don't have to compete with anyone except the day before that you lived. You be the better person than you were the day before. You become better. You learn more. You absorb more. And then you go inside and think about how you spent your day. What was the high point of your day? What was the low point of your day? What could you have done better? And what can you do to improve that? And when you do that, it then opens areas of your mind of being more creative on how to deal with your own life and the better person that you are and the people you interface with. Then the love starts going back and forth, and all of a sudden you raise the vibration of the energy around you, and you create a good feeling of camaraderie. You create a better mindset for yourself, but also for all of you that are around you, and you spread that because you're like a flower. Right back to when I was a child. It opens up and it blossoms. Find laughter, find humor. If you laugh, you're putting joy in your soul. Find the humor in something. Even something that's kind of what might have been embarrassing or happened to, find the humor in it. Find the joy. Because if you dwell on the negative, all you're doing is giving way to it. So accept it, learn from it. Don't live there. Don't live there. That happened then. That you don't live in that space. Find the joy within yourself and try to enjoy that joy as much as you can and find humor in things. Because when you laugh, it's contagious. And I know by traveling with Mark Anthony as his business manager, we were in the middle of a desert, somewhere out near Sedona, and we needed some supplies. So on the GPS, it brought us to off the road, and all we saw was cactus and sand. It was 118 degrees, and here's this lone little grocery store. There were about 3 cars out in the parking lot. We go in, we get our water, we get things to hydrate, we get sunscreen, some sustenance, and we're heading out the door, and there's this elderly man struggling to lift a carton of milk and a loaf of bread, going out to his car. And as he was going out to his car, before he did, we smiled at him. And he looked up at us, and it was like he was in this really terrible place. And all of a sudden, he lifted, and all of a sudden you see this youth in his eyes of joy, and smiled at us. And it was like, oh, we might have been the first person that smiled at him in a long time. And we walked him to his car and helped him put the things in the car, and he drove away. Well, we were out actually doing some research in the area, and we knew of the store and went back. Sure enough, that man was there. And we said to the girl at the counter, we said, that man was here yesterday. She goes, yeah, he comes in every day, maybe 2-3 times a day to get 1 and 2 items. I don't see why he doesn't even buy something and just bring it all home. And Mark, being the great intuitive and psychic, Mark said he's lost someone. There's no one he talks to all day long. This is his only form of communication. So when he saw us, he lit up again, and we walked with him, and we found out he had lost his lifelong partner of 60, 70 years. I think it was like 68 years. And she died, and now he's all alone, and they lived out in the desert. So he was making this trip just to have human contact. And because obviously he was on a fixed income, could not move, could not make those decisions to make great changes. The changes that were happening to him were hurt, grief, loneliness. And so it was like bright hope. Mark ran back in the store and told that girl, smile at him, say hello, ask him how his day is going. You're the only person, and whoever is in this store are his only contact with human beings. From that moment on, anytime I'm in a grocery store or in public and I see an elderly person, or I see someone who is struggling with a challenge of their physical being, I make sure I make eye contact. I say hello. How you doing today? Hi. Oh my gosh, from that sad face, all of a sudden the light comes through them and you see the child in their eyes. That's a little bit of good. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying, do this, people. Look into someone's eyes and smile at them. Say hello, especially elderly people who are alone and probably live the most interesting life, but can't share it with anyone because there's no one there that they know anymore. A thought just came to my mind. I owned a singing telegram company in Atlanta, and we were asked to do a lot of things, a lot of volunteer things. And I was asked to go to a children's hospital. I'm gonna cry. And there was a little girl lying in a bed, and in her room it was dark, and she was hooked up to all types of machines. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old. This is really hard. And there have been a lot of communities that came in and brought people in, brought clowns in, brought all types of characters and people. And around her bed table, they had jump ropes. They had things that you would physically do as a child. And I'm looking at her going, she's weathering away. She can't ever do this again. She needs joy. And I said to the nurse, could you wait a minute? I'm running to my car. I was dressed up as a little leprechaun. It was around St. Patrick's Day, so I had this little pixie outfit on. And I was to bring her balloons. And of course, in hospitals, you bring the Mylar balloons because they're safer. Children can't swallow them. And what happened was I brought the balloons in, but I also brought in a Polaroid camera. And I brought the Polaroid camera in, and I started to talk in a cartoon kind of voice. And I switched my voice around like different cartoon characters. I was jumping around the bed, dancing around the bed, and from her almost coma state, her eyes opened up and she looked like, "Who's this?" And I said, "Let's take some pictures together." And her eyes just lit up. And I jumped in bed with her. I thought the nurse was going to just clobber me. I was careful. And I took the camera and I was doing selfies on us. And I did about 10 different pictures. And the pictures were coming out of the camera. I used the whole roll. And then we took surgical tape and put it on her IV poles so she could see all the funny pictures. Well, the nurses were all started to fill the room, and they all started to cry because they said that was the first time they had seen a smile on that child's face in 10 days, because her mother did not have the courage to walk in the room because her mother would become hysterical, so they didn't allow her mother in the room. Can you imagine that? And this child just, she was laughing through her breathing tubes. And the pictures were hilarious. And I go, "You can't stick your tongue out, but I'll stick my tongue out." And we did all these pictures. So I waited 2 days, and I said, "I'm going to go back and see her." And I went back to the hospital, and she had died. But I was told by the head nurse, "Wow, you made her happy."